Hello, everybody. Hello, everybody. Hello, everybody. Hey, just skip it. What's up, everybody? My name is Baxter, and welcome to Cram Course, the show in which we discuss big topics in small videos. What? Were you expecting me to say Crash Course? Guys, do I look like John Green? Do I look like I'm out of high school? No, guys, this is Cram Course, because I want to be original! Also, I kind of had to cram the filming and editing of this into one night, so... But anyways, today's analytical question of the day... Boy, that got redundant. Today's analytical question is... Analyze continuities and changes in the economy of Australia from pre-colonialism to present. In other words, what changed and what stayed the same about Australia's economy. Alright, so as we saw in AP World, ever since their beginning, civilizations have been focusing on developing their economy, or the actions and interactions necessary to accumulate wealth and resources. During colonialism, many civilizations that were colonized had their economies exploited, resulting in their struggle to develop solid economies after decolonization. However, there was one colony that did not follow such a trend, and that colony was Australia. Alright, but before we dive into that, we need to discuss the economic history of Australia, as AP World didn't do that. Frowny face. Only then will it be 10 times as easy to refer to history when discussing the continuities and changes. So without further ado, here is a longer than brief overview of the economic history of Australia. Alright, so before colonialism, Australia comprised of a group of coastal tribes known as the Aborigines. I know, I was kind of expecting a more exciting name too, like Mongols or Aztecs. However, unlike their name, the Aborigines were unique in that they were a semi-hunter-gatherer society. What? A semi-hunter-gatherer society is a society that hunts, gathers, and migrates like the typical hunter-gatherer society. However, they also migrate less frequently, actually practice agriculture, although a small amount, very small, and build temporary structures that are similar to those of a settled civilization. How cool is that? So with the Aborigines, they hunted kangaroos and whales, and built structures like granaries to store food, huts if there were no caves to sleep in, and dams to conduct irrigation. Despite the underdeveloped nature of Aborigine civilization, look at China in the 1500s, the Aborigines were already interregionally trading with two other civilizations. The Macassans from Indonesia and the Papuans from New Guinea. Coupled with the fact that Australia had an abundant amount of wildlife, the Aborigines had a pretty strong economy, especially considering how developed they were. They only had to work/hunt 4 to 5 hours a day. However, colonialism brought about a change in events. In 1788, Lieutenant Cook claimed Australia for Britain. Shortly following Australia's colonization, the Aborigines' economy began to suffer, for the colonists were overhunting the kangaroos, overfishing, polluting the ocean, and of course, bringing diseases that they'd never developed immunities towards. Sounds like the Columbian Exchange, if you know what I mean. As a result, the Aborigines could not survive without European goods, thus marking the end of the Aborigines, economically speaking. After gaining control of Australia, the British decided to make Australia a penal colony, or a colony in which prisoners are sent to and employed in their prior trades. Outside of this function, the British saw no other use for Australia and began to neglect it when their interest turned towards fighting in the French Revolution. Without this financial attention, Australia was doomed to be an economic failure. However, the local government avoided this economic crisis by developing a private economy in which land was distributed for agricultural purposes and manufacturing was implemented to provide goods and services. With Australia's skilled population, this economy ultimately resulted in the creation of a stable food supply and markets which stimulated Australia's economy and prevented it from its dooming fate. However, Australia's success did not stop there. In the 1830s, Australia experienced further economic growth due to wool. At this time, wool had become an extremely high-priced commodity in Europe. With the capabilities to manufacture it, wool quickly became Australia's most important export, easily bringing in much capital. In the 1880s, yet another sector became profitable: natural resource extraction. While this sector already existed, the discovery of a larger-than-vast variety of minerals such as gold, silver, and lead made these natural resources a stable export, thus making this sector Australia's largest and most profitable. Around this time, agriculture also became aimed at exporting. With the introduction of drought-resistant grain, agricultural yields increased, and with the creation of refrigeration, a greater variety of food products could be exported. Yet another source of income. In 1901, the British Parliament passed the Commonwealth of Australia Constitution Act. Try saying that 5 times fast. Commonwealth of Australia Constitution Act, Commonwealth of Australia Constitution Act, allowing the 6 colonies of Australia to federate and form the Commonwealth of Australia. While Britain still loosely controlled the politics of Australia, Australia was still recognized as an independent country fully in control of its economy. Thus, the Commonwealth of Australia Constitution Act marks the end of colonialism in Australia, economically speaking. Commonwealth of Australia Constitution Act, Commonwealth of Australia Constitution Act, Commonwealth of Australia Constitution Act. Almost immediately, the new government established policies like the White Australia Immigration Policy, which basically excluded Asian migration into Australia, to prevent competition and to protect industries. Until the Great Depression, Australia's economy remained pretty consistent. Sure, the Great Depression hit Australia's economy hard due to many countries closing their international markets, which Australia's economy was heavily based on. However, World War II easily revived its economy. Up until the 1970s, Australia's economy had reached its peak. Unemployment was at 2%, which is really remarkable, and Australia was still heavily dependent on for exports. Additionally, expenditure on education was increased, thus increasing the skilled nature of the workforce. Direct correlation, am I right, am I right? However, the 1973 recession, which was a global thing, caused a decline in the cost of commodities. Since this is what Australia's economy was based on, Australia had a problem. In order to fully convey this situation, Australia had to lay people off in order to make sure that exporting was still profitable, causing unemployment to rise from 2% to 10%. I mean, like the US was at 15% unemployment at the end of the Great Depression. But, this is the start, so, that's not good. After almost 2 decades of political turmoil, Prime Minister Bob Hawke came up with the idea of fluctuating the value of the currency and the removal of protectionist policies such as the White Australia Immigration Act, wage fixing, and government monopolies. The goal of his idea was to stimulate competition between the industries of Australia and the industries of the rest of the world. Hawke's plan was a success. While it didn't bring Australia back to its peak, unemployment dropped 5% and exports increased. Since then, Australia's economy has been gradually recovering. And there you have it for Australia's economic history. But what about the continuities and changes in this history? Real quick, if time permits, try to guess yourselves. Okay, either time's up or you had no time, but hopefully I got you thinking. Okay, so as we saw, Australia was an export-based economy. In order to prevent the colonial crippling of this economy and other economic pressures, Australia had to implement and develop economic sectors and policies. Its success in doing so allowed it to maintain a rather strong economy throughout most of history. In other words, the changes were in economic sectors and policies, while the continuity was in the strength of the economy. Alright, so let's look at the changes first. So before colonization, manufacturing didn't exist, and while agriculture did, it was only on a subsistence level. However, when the British come in, make 6 colonies, and then forget all of them, what does Australia do? Creates a private economy that utilizes agriculture and the skilled workforce to ultimately jumpstart the economy. Colonial crippling prevented. From 1830 to 1880, when the Australian economy is doing okay, but then Europe has a high demand for wool, natural resources are discovered, and refrigeration becomes a thing, what does Australia do? New sector for wool manufacturing, new sector for natural resource extraction, and development of the agricultural sector. Man, that's a lot of changes. That will definitely help the economy out and prevent colonial crippling. When the 1973 recession hits and Australia's economy takes a nosedive, what do? New policies in which the government does not interfere with the economy. Competition promoted and economy saved. I think my point is clear. Australia had to implement and develop economic sectors and policies in order to avert economic crises. Now let's look at our continuity, that the economy was always strong. Before colonialism, the combination of abundant resources, the structure of civilization, and the interregional trade allowed the Aborigines to be so prosperous as to only need to work 4 to 5 hours a day. Yup. Strong economy. During colonialism, Australia develops a private economy that utilizes its extremely skilled workforce and has them work in all these new economic sectors, all of which are geared eventually towards global export. This mercantilistic economy brings in a lot of capital and goes without any flaws for almost a century. Clearly, developing economic sectors brought a strong economy. Even with the 1973 recession, Australia still managed to retain a strong economy by changing economic policy so that government interference was limited. This resulted in the stimulation of competition, ultimately saving the economy. This save is still evident today. I think I make my point clear. Australia has pretty much always had a strong economy because of its developments. So all in all, Australia developed economic policies and sectors in order to avoid economic crises, ultimately resulting in a strong economy. I think this discussion is relevant in today's world because it demonstrates the capricious nature of an export-based economy. In other words, this economy could be raking in loads of capital one day, but then go bankrupt the next. Many formerly colonized countries have attempted this economy, but Australia is one of the few that has successfully pulled it off, and that is because of its ability to develop sectors and policies to prevent economic crises. Ultimately, in an age with many poor countries, data like this is useful in determining ways to bring these countries out of poverty. For if we don't make this our primary objective, the global inequality could result in an all-out war to end it. What fun would that be? Everyone, thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this, I hope you learned something, and I hope you had a great day. And with that being said, dab out! Oh, my chair broke. At Commonwealth of Australia Constitution Act, Commonwealth of Australia Constitution Act, bro. Dab out!